Good morning to all of you. Welcome, Inger and her team, to Universidad ORT Uruguay. It's an honor for us to receive such a distinguished scholar and authority in the field of sustainability and related fields. This university is very proud to receive all this gathering to discuss a very interesting and problematic issue, what she calls triple planetary crisis. We are in challenging times, as you all know. These challenges include sustainability, includes climate change, includes social problems that in our country we also face. Therefore, it's a very great opportunity for the university to hear about these problems and also, as she asked us, discuss about them and have an opportunity to talk, to answer questions, and to know what United Nations and other organizations are doing to try to solve, try to discuss, try to engage countries and people like us to be aware of these difficulties and about these challenges. Nicolas is going to give a short explanation of what the university is doing in those fields. I want to thank, in that sense, especially to Nicolas Gambetta, as our expert in the field. Ines Tiscornia, sorry, I did my wife is a teacher in pronunciation, so I'm a bad student. She will not give me a good review of this speech, but I want to thank Ines. She's the one that helped us as a university to be aware of these topics. And also I want to thank the School of Administration, FACS, nuestra Facultad de Administración, that give us this opportunity to have this meeting. So please give an applause to our distinguished guest.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the School of Management and Social Sciences. We are extremely proud for this event. Thanks so much, Inger, for picking our university to host this amazing event. This is a unique opportunity we have, okay? To have such an important person, world authority related to the environment. Inger is the executive director of the United Nations Environment Program. I'm saying this in 10 seconds, but that's huge to have Inger here with us today. And to see you all here, because if you are here, it's because you know that we are going to talk about a very important issue for our lives, for our country, for our society, for the world. I had the chance to be I was last week in New York City in the Prime World Forum and in the Responsible Education Week. I spent the week with 300 academics from all around the world discussing how to incorporate these issues, these social, environmental, and governance issues in our curricula. We were 1 week discussing this, and we were discussing this for you because we want you to go out to the world with this knowledge, okay, and with these skills. And here in ORT, we are working since 2015 on these issues, incorporating ESG, triple impact, throughout our curricula in all our grades. undergrads, postgrads, executive education. We hold conferences, we do research on these issues. And we do this because we are proud members of PRIME. PRIME is the Principle for Responsible Management Education from the Global Compact, part of the United Nations. So all you receive in the classroom includes triple impact, includes responsible education, includes responsible leadership. So that's what we want for you. We are working with all our faculty. We are training all our faculty to teach you these issues. We do research on these aspects. We also are ranked in the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. This is a secret among us. Today, we had the results. We had to keep the results till Wednesday, but we are again in the top 25% of the world. For ORT, it's huge, okay? In SDG 4, we ranked in the slot 200, 300 out of 1,200. That's huge for us, okay? So we want to thank you, we want to thank our faculty, and we want to thank again Inger for being here. And we are delighted to have you, and we want to listen to you, okay? Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very, very much, because, and that news, which we all will keep very quiet, is massive. So this is massive. And I know that it doesn't come easy. It's by smart students and great professors. That's how these things are done. So very, very impressive. Is that the clicker? So here we are. So we are based in Kenya, the United Nations Environment Program. So when you start a program in Kenya, you say, good morning. And you answer back, good morning. So we're going to do that. Good morning.
Good morning.
Look at that. You could live in Kenya. Now, I'm really honored, and thank you so much for the kind welcome that you have given me and for this packed room. I apologize that I speak in English. You can ask, I have this fantastic thing, so you can ask your questions in Spanish, and we will have a good communication, I'm sure. I wanted to speak to you as future leaders, whether it's in industry, in communities, or in companies, or in government, or in academia. I wanted to speak to you about things that may not seem mainstream, but I think we just heard from Professor here that actually it's becoming part and parcel of any management, administration, social sciences, education. Because if we do not understand the very ground upon which we are standing, if we don't understand the very air that we breathe, if we don't understand our very consumption patterns, then what does that do for our understanding of what we are going to lead? And that means we have to understand the Earth systems, the systems upon which everything on this planet relies, the way in which the earth sweats and that makes your rainfall, the way in which heat comes and goes, the way in which we have come to rely on nature to be this predictable thing that we don't even ask about. Because of course it's going to rain, of course it's going to get cold, of course season will follow season, but here's the thing. That's not necessarily how it's going, and therefore everything that you do in the businesses and everywhere else where you will take jobs, in governments, in society, it matters that you get this issue. And I have to learn how to use this one. This one, thank you. So in the UN, and in particularly in my organization, the United Nations Environment Program, headquartered in Kenya, established in 1972. And at that point, of course, all the UN organizations were in the global north, New York, Geneva, Paris, Rome. And so Kenya said, hang on a minute, you want an environment organization? Don't put it in the global north. These real issues are in the global south. And we have voice, we have solutions, but we also have the problems. We speak about today the triple planetary crisis, the crisis of climate change, and I think you're all very familiar with that, the crisis of biodiversity and nature loss, the middle picture, and the crisis of pollution and waste. And I'm going to take you through each of these crises and hopefully also some of the solutions, but you have to be part and parcel of making those solutions. But before I do, I want to take you on a journey of not millennia, but of hundreds of thousands of years. Because I want to start at the 100,000 years ago, at the beginning of this chart. And on the other axis, you can see temperatures. And you will see that we had a very, very, very uneven temperature regime for literally 100,000 years. I'm going to walk over here, but I'm going to speak loud. So you can see this is when the humanoids walked out of Africa. Oh, even better. And this is when Aborigines probably arrived in Australia. And this is when we saw some migration to South Asia. And then something happens, and the temperature normalizes, and we arrive at what we call the Holocene. But it's a blink of an eye, if we think about it. It is not something that we can take for granted. And so when we go and talk about that's just this moment when beginning of agriculture could begin. Why? Because temperature was even. So we could actually plan on nature being predictable. That's the story that we all have to understand. And so if we take these last few, that bit, and we stretch that out into this bit, you will see that, you know, the end of the last ice age and the younger dryas, no, let's forget the ages, it's not important. But then what happens is all of a sudden, we normalize inside a temperature regime that's just 2 degrees up and down, which makes it very, very, very steady. And that's where we have been since the beginning of time, as we know it. Since the beginning of times, Vikings, the little European ice age, that was caused by volcanoes. And then we are here, you know, in this stability period, and all of a sudden, we see something happening. And that is done by human beings. That's done by us. This heating, this warming, right? So we are seeing a very, very rapid temperature rise caused by climate change. Something we have never seen before, and we are making the assumption that by causing that temperature rise, everything will remain the same. But we have to understand that it is in our hands what we are doing. And therefore, the action of climate change is not sort of an by the way. It's absolutely fundamental to the survival of civilization and humanity as we know it. So the thing is, though, that not only students are waking up to this risk, so are businesses. And this is from the latest World Economic Forum risk report. It always comes out in every January. And you will see within, so this is a survey of CEOs, world-class CEOs from across the world. And they are surveys saying, what are the biggest risks that you see for your business, for your enterprise, for what you're involved with? And they are saying, okay, misinformation is the first risk. I'm looking at the first column. And extreme weather risks is my second biggest risk, for that's what I have said. And the sixth biggest risk, the green risk, number 6, is pollution. That's if you're asking the CEOs, within 2 years, what is likely going to cause the most shock to your business? Misinformation, number 1. After that, climate change. And then later on, pollution. Then they ask, okay, 2 years, fine. I want to know, you, business leader, what's the highest risk in a 10-year dimension? And you see all the risks turn green. That's not good. That means they're all environmental, all right? And that means extreme weather events, number 1. Biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse, number 2. Critical change to Earth systems, number 3. And 4, natural resources shortages. And then you have 10 as pollution. So the reality that what we are seeing here is really that businesses are understanding this very, very well because they have to deal with risk to ensure that they can serve their shareholders as well as their broader economic and social obligations. So in a way, and this is some research by Dr. Catherine Richardson and Dr. Johan Rockström, they said there are these planetary boundaries, and we're sort of pushing into these planetary boundaries and taking us beyond what we know is a safe operating space. And so they say, well, biochemical flows is way off the charts. We produce fertilizer, which we need, but we are overproducing it, and we're not managing our urban wastewater. And urban wastewater is also nitrogen, right? And so it has these components. So we're just sucking this into the environment beyond the safe operating space. And obviously, we're doing the same on biodiversity. We are losing species. We have about 8 million species in this planet, humans included. And we are losing, if we don't take action, we will lose about 1 million. And that's a lot. And you could say, what does it matter? One fly, one orchid. Why do I care? I care because everything is connected to everything. And ecosystems are like this really complicated web where one species eats one, nests another, and feeds on a third, and provides nutrition for a fourth. And you lose something, and the whole thing can fall apart. That's this one. And then you have land system change. What was forest? Just think next door, not next door, but Brazil. What's happening to the Amazon forest, as an example. But even in this country, and in my own, where they're farming countries, so we've converted a lot of land, fine, but can we still have the land to be in balance? And of course, climate change, where we are pushing against the 2 degrees, and we well know. So these planetary boundaries that we're pushing, but not understanding that the whole Earth systems upon which we rely is sort of under pressure. So let me walk through each of these things and speak first about climate change. And here, out in Hawaii, there is a laboratory. It's called Mauna Loa. Why is it there? Because it's really the most pure place, in the middle of the Pacific, not a lot of air pollution, very pure air, all things considered. So you can measure things without getting disturbance by local air pollution. This we pulled, you can see it's pulled from the 13th of June. And this is carbon dioxide concentration in the air over the years. You can go in, check the year you were born, and see what the concentration was. It's called PPI. And then you can see, I was born around 315, just telling you. And so here you go. I mean, the point here is, and you can see where that was. At any rate, so the point is, this is what's happening. It's measurable, it's discernible, it's completely precise. And so that is what we're doing to our planet. And if we want to get a little more technical, and we do, so we at UNEP, we are the responsible people. You have heard maybe about something called IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It sits with UNEP, and it brings together with our friends at World Meteorological Organization, and it brings together the best scientists in the world to help us understand what is happening. So we, UNEP, we issue a report called the Emissions Gap Report every year to help negotiators understand the severity of the situation. And here, it's a little complicated, but what you see, if I'll walk you through it, and you can see sort of the blue top line, that speaks to, this is where we are. The current policies that we all have, energy policy, transport policy, whatever policy, that's our emissions load. It's just going to be steady. It's no longer going too much up. That's good. But it's just steady. Then you may recall that we made these promises to each other in the Paris COP in 2021, COP21 in 2015, where we agreed that we were going to reduce. And we were going to make these promises called a national determined contribution, and every year we're going to strengthen them. And so countries write these reports, and they say, here's my promise. And we said, we do this every 5 years. And when we meet in Belém in Brazil, that will be the 5-year date where we submit the third report, where we say, okay, we're going to do even more, I hope. And so inside those reports, every country says, this is what I'll do if I have money for it, and this is what I'll do from somebody else, and this is what I'll do with my own money. I commit to this. So the conditional and the unconditional. And so what you can see here is the unconditional, the yellow line. Meh, it's like nothing, really nothing. And then conditional, meh, nothing too. And so therein lies the problem, right? That our promises to each other and ourselves and to the future generations, to you, are inadequate. Because if you look over in the boxes here, you can see that the unconditional takes us by a reduction of 2%. It's completely meaningless and mathematically, statistically irrelevant. And the conditional takes us by 9%. Yeah, nice. If we had done this since the beginning of when we became aware of climate change. If we want to reach 2 degrees by 2100, less than 2 degrees of heating, we need to reduce by 28% right now. And I tell you, we don't want to be at 2 degrees, because already we're pushing on 1.5, and there have been times when we surpassed it. So if we want to reach 1.5 degrees by 2100 over the 1990 levels, we need to reduce by 42%. And that means an absolutely massive transition of the energy system, of the 5 primary sectors that take us to climate change. Obviously energy, buildings and constructions, agriculture, finance, as well as, what am I forgetting? Transport and mobility. So these are obvious, the places where we need to look, right? And so going into that then, and seeing, so where is all the CO2 coming from? No surprise there, it's coming from coal, it's coming from gas, and it's coming from oil. I mean, we knew that. And you can see the relative slices. And then we have existing infrastructure, of course, also causing a degree of what it's taking. So here is our carbon budget, and up there you have the 2 degrees, and obviously neither of these compute. So when we look then at how we're going to make these shifts just in the electricity industry, transport and buildings, it's clear that, and this is again, you are the future leaders, I appeal to you to, wherever you go and whatever you do, that there's some massive opportunities for you to seize and be part of what we need to see. On electricity, of course, you know, what does it look like to have renewables? And you're in a nicely windy country, and so, you know, what does that look like? What are the opportunities? What can we do on waste to energy? What are the real opportunity here? You have waves all around. What is the opportunity? What does it look like? The sun is very intense. You have high solar radiation. What does that look like? What can we do? We're still heating our waters by electricity in Uruguay in the winter. With that solar radiation, come on. There's just so much opportunity here for businesses to lean in. And it will mean that your electricity bill will go right down, right, once you made the upfront investment. So that's on the one front. On industry, of course, how can we move globally to zero emission steel? Steel is a big emissions producer of emissions. We're going to build. We need new housing. How can we think about zero emission cement? We build the equivalent every week of the total footprint of Paris. Yeah. So every week the whole world brings a footprint of Paris. So that being the case, how are we going to do that but not having that heavy carbon footprint? And so on. Transport, of course, electric, mobility, public transport, good infrastructure for that, and buildings, minimize emissions there. and build zero emissions building only, etc. So these are the real opportunity. But nevertheless, even if we do all of this, as you will know, we're still seeing wildfires, we're still seeing inundations, we're still seeing droughts, we're still seeing all of the things that climate change brings. And so first and foremost, what we have to do is we have to mitigate. So that means reducing our CO2 emissions, right? By doing all the things I just talked about. But once we've mitigated, and this is not done, we will still need to adapt. Because we are living, you saw that graph going up, it is up. And so we need to invest in adaptation and be very smart about that. And once we've adapted as best we can, there's still going to be a risk. And that risk, as future leaders, you need to think about, because we always tend to plan on our companies and governments and families on the basis of the past, but you can't anymore. You have to actually plan on the basis of this rather uncertain scenario for the future. So that's where the residual risk comes in. And how do we transfer some of that risk so that the poorest people in the world are not ending up holding the bill? And how do we make sure that that risk is properly addressed? And then we get some horrific climate change event, a cyclone, a storm, a wildfire, a drought, whatever it might be. And that's where the world finally agreed in Dubai for the COP28 on the loss and damage fund. Because, you know, that residual risk will be there. So, but first and foremost, we have to mitigate. On the adaptation side, so now we've talked about mitigation, reducing CO2 emissions, but still, as I said, we have to adapt because climate change is here and now. So I don't want to worry too much right now about the modeled cost and the real cost. That's a economic and econometrics modeling, but let's just talk about the fact that these are the financial flows. And this is what we need, right? I mean, it's like that. So that means, therefore, but let's just, financial flows. No, these are the financial flows from governments, which is why businesses, industry, agriculture, everybody needs to, even in your own home, think about what it is that you could do to make this more resilient and make it more climate friendly, and so on, to ensure that you have greater resilience. And we used to build close to the coastline and near the wetlands and where the river flows. It's going to be hard to do that in climate changing worlds in some places in the world. So that was a little bit on climate change, and I hope I haven't depressed you too much. Now, I'm going to depress you about nature. And essentially, I mean, this is a great picture of deforestation, just like that, right? I mean, it's very stark. What is it that's happening when we make these land use changes? Well, of course, it impacts life on land, life in water. And so, just to give you a sense of the extinction rate, there is a natural extinction rate. It's very slow, but we don't have dinosaurs anymore. And so, you know, it doesn't happen at this rapid speed where we can essentially say, oh yeah, such and such a species will probably be extinct in 5 years unless we do anything, because there are only 10 left. That's because of us, human hunting or human eradication of these particular species. But here you just see, you know, fish, we've lost a massive amount, birds, reptiles, etc., etc. The highest species that we're probably going to lose the fastest are corals, coral reef, you know, the little corals, because, and you can see that, I guess, yeah, here, reef corals, they're up at 36% assessed, but we know that at 2 degrees we have 99% of the corals gone. So, and of course corals, this is where the fish spawn, this is where the life begins for many, many species. So it just gives you a sense, as an example, the point here is basically to give us an understanding of extinction. So what's causing our species loss? We talk about these 5 drivers of loss, or 5 impact drivers. First of all, we are changing the thing that was into something human impacted, right? Land use changes, sea use changes. We overfish, we cut, we fragment, we convert, we fell the trees, whatever it is that we're doing. And that's the largest driver of biodiversity loss. Then we pollute an awful lot. That's, again, us. And then we do something with a particular species. We take too much of it. It can be overfishing, deforestation because of timber, whatever it is, but we don't leave it at sustainable levels. And of course, climate change, we just spoke about, and invasive species. Cats in Hawaii, birds, many of them cannot fly. And so, yeah, there you have it. So, invasive species. These 5 drivers are really the primary causes. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's all done by us. It's not like it's happening because of something else. So, it's about understanding our own role in this. And when we understand that and just say this is a land map and it just shows you what's left untouched, it's really the things we didn't want to touch because it was either the polar regions or the Sahara or the Amazon. Well, it was too difficult, but now we are touching it. And so you can see sort of it's really what we humans consider fairly useless for exploitation till it became useful. So it gives you a sense of the extent of human most likely natural and most likely the most modified. So there's not a lot left for nature to take a breath. And I could have done the same for oceans, of course, where we are fishing the ocean to empty. Instead, I thought I'd show you the acidification rate. So acidification means, of course, that we are exhausted and we are emitting CO2, and the oceans are this innocent, right? They can't. They will breathe in, right? And so they will take up whatever CO2 we put out there. They take up about half of the CO2. The other half is by biomass. The more we cut the biomass, the more the oceans will take up. The more the oceans take up, the more they will acidify. Essentially, acidification of the oceans means complete change of the ocean's environment. And we haven't even begun to talk about ocean warming. So acidification and ocean warming is what will kill off many of our species. And you can see how fast it is going from pretty much the 1970s till today. So, and that's why we're seeing so much die-off, sargassum you hear about in the Caribbean, and so on and so forth. So what has happened? What has happened is that our business environment has sort of said, and we've been doing this for 200, 300, 400 years, right? There is this thing we call nature. It is inexhaustible, we thought. Just take stuff from it. So we can produce clever people, human capital, and we can produce clever machines and stuff and buildings and things, produce capital. Because it's like, this thing just keeps coming. Nature is very generous, except that natural capital is paying the price, and the value, that asset class of natural capital is really going down, whereas the other two are going A-OK. But at the end of the day, the natural capital is the very foundation upon which we stand, and therein lies the issue and the challenge. So we have a plan, like most good UN agencies have, and we agreed globally at the COP for biodiversity on this plan for biodiversity, and we said, okay, by 2030, it's referred to as 30 by 30, by 2030, 30% of all land should be protected, and 30% of all degraded land should be under active restoration. And there are some other goals here. Right now, we are around 8.6% of oceans protected, and I forget what we are, 16% something like that, on the terrestrial environment protected. So we have some way to journey. But this is a new plan, and we have to do it by 2030. So hopefully we'll get there. There's also other goals, which I'm not going to go into, but it's very, very important. We also agreed, and this is target 7, to reduce emissions of pollution, including nutrients, by half, to reduce by half toxic effluents and all kinds of other pollution into our environment. Talking of pollution, let me get to the third crisis, pollution. And here, just think about it for a moment. We, humans, are the only species that don't live in harmony, right? The snail, a wild animal dies in the wild, somebody else will eat it, and in the end, it's gone. It becomes soil. Everything is recycled beautifully. The trees will drop their leaves, they will rot, they will become soil, yada, yada, yada. Not us. We leave this toxic trail of pollution behind us. The only species that does that. So the story is that we have this linear economy of take from the planet, make, and waste. We haven't, unlike the planet, where everything is circular, we haven't thought about, okay, take, make, remake, and not having all that waste, but we discard things very easily. And it's even more expensive to remake than it is to take more. But the price is coming to us right now. Nature is sending us these invoices in the form of storms and climate change and so on and so forth. So the biggest issues are biomass, fossil fuels, metals, it's okay, and as well as non-metallic minerals. And just very quickly to say, if you look at these 3 scenarios, what happens today is, okay, the point is here about how much are we recycling, how much goes to the landfill, how much do we do to waste to energy, how much are we collecting, and how much are we dumping. And so here, 2020 baseline, right? So pretty much collection, there's some, and it goes, frankly, straight into the landfill, and then a little bit of waste to energy. But if we want to go to a full net cost, and I'm not going to bother you with this, we can pull down because we can do a lot of recycling, the light blue, and we can do waste to energy, and we can do much better collection and avoid all the dumping. And of course, ideally, we would get to this circular economy where there's very little left, and we take it all down into the stipulated line, the broken line, into recycling. This metal can that I bought my tomatoes in, throw it away. There's more of it where it came from. It's incredible to me because it's a finite material, metal. It's not like at one point we will get the end of the last mine, of the last metal mine. Off it goes. And so that's the point here. So that's one of the big pollution factors. Another is, of course, chemicals. We are very good at inventing chemicals. There are tens of thousands of chemicals out there. And this is just an example of lead pollution. Lead, I don't know what it's called in Spanish. Lead. Lidio. There you go. That one. It's very, very, very toxic. And if a little child is exposed to it, it will impact his or her brain development. So it's very, 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 very toxic. It used to be in paints, in solvents, in batteries, and many other things. It still is, and was in our petrol, our benzene, our gas. And you can see where it's very extreme. We're in South America, so it's still quite extreme lead pollution in this part of the world. Extreme in South Asia, extreme, because of very polluting motor vehicles and so on. But the point is, it's very, very dangerous, and we have to be able to deal with it. It's just one chemical. Now, there is a growing global green chemical production, but it's taking very slowly off. So we need to be very mindful about chemicals. We recently negotiated an agreement that said, okay, we're going to have some targets the first one, which I thought will, honestly, that we even had to negotiate it, was ridiculous. The things you ban at home, you can't export. Hello? I mean, really? But yes, that was one target. And I think it's by 2030, you have to stop exporting that which you have banned to save your own citizens. Okay, never mind. I mean, and then by 2035, everybody has to phase out highly hazardous pesticides that we use in our agriculture for the stuff we actually eat. Just saying. And of course, that has very impact. We are not anti-pesticides, but there are some that we know are highly hazardous. And then you can see the other targets there. The point is that it takes the global world to get this in place. We are right now negotiating a new treaty on plastic pollution. This was a sculpture that an artist made in Nairobi for us when we were negotiating. It was very meaningful, you can imagine. It was done by women from the slums, and they connected this, and it was very powerful to how do we close the plastic tap on pollution and plastic in our environment. We have one more session to go, I hope, in Geneva in August, where we should land this treaty. It'll be like the climate treaty, phase out useless and unnecessary plastics, and we will see where that goes. So what is it that UNEP brings? Well, we bring all of these various things, and I'm not going to talk about it here, but of course, we are the global platform where all of these things happen. You know, all the conventions are made in UNEP. We promote a lot of synergies amongst multilateral environmental agreements. We set a lot of standards that countries then can choose to follow, but usually their media or their young people will demand that they follow them. And of course, we maintain a strong review of the environment. We issue a lot of books and so on and so forth. So the bottom line really is that how does the science come about? I mentioned IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. That's where the best science is brought together for climate. There's also something called Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. And right now we are in Punta del Este, because we are negotiating the third panel. Wish us luck. We have to finish by Friday, and it will be made in Uruguay, and it will be a global panel on pollution, waste, and chemicals. It's a very big deal, a very, very big deal. And if we land it, I'll be the happiest woman ever. So that's why we're here in beautiful Uruguay. And so wish us luck. And with that, I will stop talking and start listening. Thank you so much.
What do you think about the degrowth movement? Might be the degrowth initiative some kind of solution for these issues exposed?
The what movement?
The degrowth.
Degrowth. Oh, sorry, my bad.
Yes.
Do you want to take a few?
Should we want to
Okay.
one by one?
So, living in Kenya, what I can say is that Kenya needs to grow because it has a lot of poor people. So it needs for the economic engines to roll so that they can be lifted out of poverty. People who live on $1 a day if they're lucky, right? And so there needs to be jobs and things that take them beyond just having a small place where they can grow a little bit of maize. So it's not a global answer I can give you, but I think we need to understand that well-being, happiness, doesn't come from consumption. In some places, I think there's a sense that the more I have, the more stuff, the better off I am, and that's what's driving conspicuous consumption. So I think I come from a country where we are taxed up to here to make sure that poorer people in my country are not poor. I believe that we need to think about some of these issues more globally. understanding that when we are all better off, guess what? We're all better off. It's not rocket science. So degrowth is difficult to say because there are countries that really need to expand their economic base. But there are other countries where, frankly, you could question whether that growth that they seem to be pursuing is commensurate with the well-being that these people have. That's my way of answering your question. Thank you. And you can ask in Spanish, because I have this magical lady here.
Primero que nada, disculpa por hablar en español. Muchísimas gracias por tu conferencia. Mi pregunta era sobre qué tan coherente podemos considerar el compromiso de los estados por estas regulaciones, cuando muchas de sus producciones son desplazadas a países con normativas ambientales menos serias. Mi pregunta sería ¿qué tan coherente podemos considerar el esto?
This is an absolutely brilliant question. Thank you. And you know, the point is, can we, I think globally we said, okay, yeah, we will have a nice clean environment and we'll move all these dirty industries to these poor countries. And okay, yeah, it's nice. They will take it because it'll get them some jobs. But they're dirty, dangerous, polluting jobs. That is what many countries have done in their either they have occupied colonialization, but occupied other nations, or they have outsourced, but you know, these various ways that a number of countries have gotten rich on the back of someone else. Clearly, what we need, but the point that these charts show, pollution is still there. And last I checked, you know, the air moves, the water moves. Climate, if you have climate change, I have climate change. It's not like a condition that you can keep and I can say, okay, I build a wall and there's no climate change inside my house. No. And so that's why the United Nations really try to work with all member states. Not always do we get there. Some are rogue states and will not adhere to the commitments that they have made. But there is more of a global chorus of holding to account. And so as we see some of the bigger countries wanting to, for example, China was the place where all the many dirty industries, just at the global scale, were, and now China is saying, thank you, but no thank you. There was a lot of export of plastic waste from the US to Southeast Asia. Now these countries are saying, thank you, but no thank you. And so all of a sudden, many of these countries are having to deal with their own waste in their own places. That's a good thing in my view, because people, when they have voice and freedom of speech and a free media, they will not tolerate that they live next to these dirty places. Unfortunately, and this will be my last point, even in places where these things happen, there's often what we refer to as environmental racism. And so we put the dirty industries where marginal, quote unquote, people live. People who are oppressed, who are marginalized, they may be from a different ethnic or racial group. So let's put all the dirty stuff over here. We've seen that, there's a scholar, and right now, I know him so well. Okay, at Florida University, excellent scholar at any rate, who's come out and spoken about environmental racism. He's an African-American gentleman and professor. And so that is also, so we see the outsourcing outside boundaries, but we also see the placing of the dirtiest of the dirty on the marginal groups. Neither, of course, is acceptable, and it's up to us all to hold everybody to account. Thank you.
Buenas. Quería preguntarle sobre el aumento del nivel del mar, específicamente sobre el caso de Kiribati, porque ya desde hace unos años que las Naciones Unidas ha reconocido a a ciudadanos que salen del país como los primeros refugiados climáticos. Entonces quería preguntarle qué acciones se está tomando, aparte del reconocimiento por parte de las Naciones Unidas, para ayudar directamente a esas personas que tienen que migrar obligatoriamente de la isla, porque está quedando bajo agua, y al mismo tiempo preguntarle qué acciones se están tomando para mitigar el efecto en la isla acerca del aumento del nivel del mar, porque no es que pase como con el caso de los Países Bajos, que tienen el mismo problema, pero han tenido inversiones millonarias porque tienen una economía estable y han tenido megaproyectos para poder mitigar el impacto del aumento del nivel del mar.
No, thank you so much. And there will come a time when no dike and no dam is enough. Netherlands have a history of mitigating sea level, not rise, but just heavy storms, because that was the nature as we knew it. It was just normal. But what we are seeing now is this very rapid increase because of ice melt. And today you are beginning to see Arctic navigation from Asia to the Americas. In the summer months, it's completely ice-free, and soon in the winter months. Where did that ice go? It's in the ocean. And so that is the issue. And of course, if we were to see, if we pass a tipping point on Arctic and Antarctica in terms of sea level rise, we are talking meters and meters. No amount of dams. So what happens then? Let's assume that we actually live up to our promises of the Paris Agreement, and that we actually do all of the climate mitigation. So we shift from gas, oil, and coal to renewable. And we manage to stabilize the climate at 1.5 degree. You're right. Kiribati or Kiribati will be impacted, as will many other low-lying, including this area. Because when I was driving, I could see the mouth of the river, and I could say, oh, okay. At the whole area inlet all the way up to Buenos Aires is coastal by the river, and therefore very impacted by sea level rise, especially because it's closer to the Arctic ice melt. And so what happens to those small island developing nations like Kiribati? Many of them have, in fact, as you said, bought property. Kiribati has made an agreement with, in part, Fiji, where they bought land, and in part, Australia. But what does that mean? I mean, it's a loss of identity, loss of... it's just... In Copenhagen COP 2009, the Prime Minister of Maldives said, "You are all Maldivians." The point is, don't think that you are safe. You are the natives of the Maldives. Because what's coming to me today is coming to you tomorrow. And the truth is that if we do not take action, if we climate procrastinate further, not only Kiribati, but all coastal zones. And we all will go for higher lands. And of course, this is also where all our big cities are. They are on the coast. So the reality of climate injustice and inequity is very real. Right now, of course, I mean, the UN mobilizes, the UN international system, I should say, has made this commitment of the international system of $100 billion every year. And we got the new financial goal at the last COP, which means even more money by 2025, 2030. But it's not enough, which is why whatever you decide to do in your careers, think about, it doesn't matter what you do. If you go in and you become a minister of the church, if you go in and you become a community leader, a mobilizer, if you start up your own company, if you work in government, if you work in private sector, it does not matter. Carry these things with you, because whatever you do in wherever you are will make a difference to getting us to the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I was wondering if you could tell us how you think the multiple armed conflicts that are going on around the world are affecting the climate right now. Like, we're breathing, just as you said, Earth circulates and water circulates. We're breathing the same air that people on Gaza are breathing. So how is that affecting the climate right now? Thank you.
So it's actually a really important point. So what happens to our atmosphere when we have cumulative impacts of effects of emissions into it? And those emissions can be from many things. They can be from peaceful things, like a volcano. It's gonna go. If it's gonna go, it's gonna go. It can be from rockets that we use to launch satellites. It's gonna go, we launch it, and we're launching more and more. And then we do this to kill each other, which, you could argue was not exactly the smart thing to do. And so we can maybe begin to understand satellites, but this latter one, really? Because the cumulative impact on our atmosphere, the atmosphere doesn't really know where it's coming from. It will just take it, just like the oceans will take it. And that means that what we call the cumulative loading into the atmosphere has many, many chemical processes. One, of course, CO2 and toxicity. And some of these warheads in various wars, it doesn't matter, any war, might have nuclear tracer, not nuclear bombs, but the nuclear propellant, so that you have a radiation risk. A small radiation, but radiation, you don't go into the X-ray machine just like that, right? So small radiation is radiation. And so each of these are imperative to be very fundamentally aware of. So yes, a climate impact. There's some studies that have been in the newspapers, but I can't vouch for their accuracy that speaks to the amount of propellant, rocket propellant that has been emitted on Gaza and what it corresponds to. Let others do the scientific checking on that. But what we are also concerned about is, of course, the cumulative effect of all of these impacts, and not just on climate change, but also on the ozone layer. That protective shield that protects us from radiation. We know that chlorinated gases, so gases that come from chlor, have a degenerating impact on the ozone layer. And we understand that rocket launches, as well as other chemical processes, interact with that. And we've just spent 40 years trying to close the ozone layer, so it's not very clever to do that. So we remain quite concerned and look at that on Gaza in particular, and on Ukraine, and on, I'm sorry to say, on 25 other conflicts. One of UNEP's mandate is to assess the environmental damage caused by conflict. And so if you search, you will find for our report on Gaza, you will find our report on Ukraine and Sudan and a number of other countries.
Buenos días, gracias a la universidad por haber traído a esta persona tan importante. Hay muchos estudiantes de arquitectura y arquitectos en sala también que se sumaron a la conferencia, sobre todo muchos de lo mal llamada generación de cristal, que en realidad son la generación esperanza. Entonces, en tanto a que son la generación esperanza y en tanto a que además están en una disciplina que realmente todos los arquitectos creemos que podemos cambiar el mundo desde toda la vida, seguimos creyéndolo y lo vamos a seguir creyendo. ¿Cuál sería su mensaje para alinearnos desde nuestra disciplina a todas estas realidades y a cómo cambiar estas realidades?
Look, I mean, you are the planners. We're building a Paris a week. Build it well. Think about the materials that you use. How can you incorporate ambient cooling, ambient heating, ambient light? How can you use traditional processes that we knew 200, 300 years ago to retain heat overnight in the cold times? How can you use the breeze, this beautiful wind that you have, to cool rather than having air conditioners? How can you use natural light without that causing that you need to ramp up the air conditioner? How can you build of materials that are maybe rebuilt? So if you're tearing down something, can you crush and rebuild with the same? Can you use repurposed materials? And do we all need to live in what in the US I understand they call McMansions? How can we densify our cities and make them livable? How do we design a 10-minute city so that I can reach everything within 10 minutes and I don't have to get in my big fat car and go to the big mall? How do we make these things happen to make it livable? You all know that when you walk down a highway with cars zooming by, it is not a livable place. But when you walk in a cute neighborhood with some trees and some cooling because of the trees and little shops and little cafes, that's a livable neighborhood. That's the future of cities. We have to be very smart. And then we have to think about the kind of waste management optimization. How do we design cities so that recycling is part and parcel of the DNA of the city or of the building or of the neighborhood that you're designing? It's all in your hands because the tools are there now. And so I'm really happy that there are architects and urban planners, etc., inside this place. You hold a big key to the future, so don't lose it. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Okay, Inger, we are so happy, so happy. This morning has been fantastic. Thank you very much for visiting us. Please, a big round of applause for Inger. But also, a huge round of applause for all of you that are here. We are proud of you. We are proud of the questions you raised. And please, we urge you to go back to the classroom and discuss with all your professors about what we've been talking about today, okay? Thank you so much.